We are live.
Hi, my name is Bray Johnson, and I'm running for Red River County District Clerk. I'm not really good at public speaking, and I did work in there with Janice Gentry. I appreciate any support I can get.
Good evening. My name is Williams. I'm your current district clerk. I'm seeking re-election here in Red River County. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so thankful to be here with you. My name is Brenda Williams. Like I said, I'm the daughter of Jamie Brown and Jeannie Downs. I'm the wife to my loving husband, Ethan Williams. I have two beautiful daughters, Lindy J. and Scotty Marie. My great-grandmother is Clara Gaddis. She was the district clerk here in the county for over 30 years. So I guess you could say it ran in the blood just a little bit. I'm an Avery ISD alumni, a member of Leesville Baptist Church, a proud Detroit Eagle fan, but you can never take my love away from Avery. Once a Bulldog, always a Bulldog. I'm seeking re-election as district clerk because I genuinely want to continue to serve the community that molded me into the person I am today. During my time as clerk, I implemented a new jury program called Web Jury that has increased the efficiency in the courtroom. We've completed the scanning of all civil and criminal records dating back to the early 1900s. We co-hosted with our county clerk, Chastity Chandler, the Region 6 County and District Clerks Association meeting here in the county for the first time. I was named one of 8 district clerks in the state of Texas for District Clerk of the Year, and I currently serve on the Scholarship Committee and Pictorial Directory Committee. If re-elected, my goal is pretty well to stay the same, to maintain transparency, preserve integrity, and to continue expanding my knowledge and as laws and guidelines continue to change. If you'd like to schedule a time to chat, give me a call, and we'd appreciate your vote March 2nd. Thank you.
I know I hear it. Okay, you got time ready?
Pledge allegiance.
Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's what women are good for, telling men what to do. Everybody would like to stand and pledge allegiance to our great nation. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Bray, if you could move in a little closer. That.
Good evening. My name is Josh Bray. My wife Beth and I live in Paris, Texas. We have 2 daughters, Anderson and Anley, and I'm a 1998 graduate of Paris High. From there, I went to the University of Alabama, where I got my undergraduate degree in finance and then got my master's in marketing. After leaving Alabama, I came home and went to the Texas Christian University Ranch Management Program, where I got a certificate in ranch management. Came back to Paris, started Sanitation Solutions. Many of y'all have seen our trash trucks all over this region for many, many years. We service 65 cities throughout Northeast Texas. Built that company from 0 employees to 150. Was fortunate to sell that company about 6 years ago, but all through that time I've had the opportunity to serve on a bunch of different boards. I serve on the Guarantee Bank and Trust Board, which is about a $3 billion bank. I serve on the Paris Junior College Board, where we have the 2nd lowest tax rate out of 50 community colleges in the state of Texas, so we've been fiscally responsible. I serve on the Paris Regional Health Board, where I'm chairman of the board, and I also serve as chairman of the Paris Economic Development Corporation. We've been fortunate there to have $500 million in new investment over the last 4 or 5 years and seen 1,500 jobs either created or retained over that time period. When you talk about the issues, the #1 polling issue in the state of Texas is property tax relief. Clearly, we all want property tax relief, and I'd love to eliminate property taxes. But the truth of the matter is there isn't math to support it. And so there's going to be some considerable differences in our plans. My plan is to send excess revenue collected at the state level back in the form of M&O property tax relief, which would reduce the pressure on our school tax that we currently pay. I'd also like to see the exemption amount increased. You haven't seen the relief that's been passed because legislatively that goes into effect this year, and you'll see that on your next tax bill. If you really look at all that, at the end of the day, we've got to make sure we're not taxing our seniors and our people out of their homes. On the other side of it, when I think about our educational facilities and our cities and our counties, we've got to make sure that they're properly funded, that our kids have a proper opportunity to get an education, and that our cities and counties have the means of income in order to provide the needed resources like police and fire and infrastructure on utilities and roads. Let's talk about the difference. When you talk about a consumption tax, what's needed in Texas is 20%. Don't take my word for it. Look it up online and you'll find that it's 20%. It's supported everywhere. The other thing that's required is broadening the tax base. That means taxing things like groceries, pharmaceuticals, and agricultural products. I really want this group right here in Red River County to think about what that looks like in Red River County. What are we buying and selling here? And how much tax revenue can we actually create off of the consumption tax when the majority of the big products that are being bought either in Mount Pleasant, Harris, or Texarkana? You would starve to death, and you would starve out the city, and you would starve out the county, and you would starve out your educational system. There is no math here to do that. On the other end of it, if you think about where we are in this region, it would drive shoppers out of this region into Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas to buy those goods, crushing our small businesses. It just won't work. At the end of the day, we got to stop Marvin Nichols. That lake cannot happen. We will spend the money to do the research to find alternate options like raising lake levels, buying water from out of state. On the other side, we got to protect life. We got to protect land. We got to protect water. We got to protect guns. We got to protect the things as Christians that are most important to us. At the end of the day, there's a lot to talk about. We're limited on time. I'd love to have your support and vote to be the next representative.
Thank you. I'm Chris Mitchell from Hugh Springs in Cass County. I'm a graduate of Hugh Springs High School and the University of Texas at Tyler. I'm married to a beautiful blonde in the red. Back here at the back, named Debbie, who I met on a blind date. No, she was not blind. 28 years ago. I've got my mother, Teresa, here on the second row. Her birthday is Friday, and I'm not going to tell you how old my mother is, except that she was born in 1946. That's all I'm going to tell you. She has a birthday Friday night. I own and operate Crump's Food Center in Linden, Texas. My family's been in the grocery business as far as ownership, for 65 years. The store that I operate, I built in 2000 when I was 34. I just turned 60 years old last month. So we've been blessed. We went through some struggles early on, but we've been blessed immensely. And the last thing I want to do is tax groceries and send someone across the state line to buy groceries. Now, the data that I have is different than the data he has, and it's supported by the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Once the M&O compression of your school property tax, which is your largest part of your property tax bill, the governor is going to work on shrinking that to zero with the help of the legislature, which I will be a part of. A 6.72% consumption tax across the board in Texas meets the needs and the revenue that are generated by property taxes. That is a fact. Second, let's move to Marvin Nichols Reservoir. It's interesting that Josh is on the board of Guarantee Bond Bank, which is a wonderful institution, but it's 100% in favor of the development of the Marvin Nichols Reservoir. Now, I'm sure he is the only board member that's not, but that bank is on record as supporting Marvin Nichols. Marvin Nichols is the biggest land grab in the history of Texas. We all know it. We're on the same page on that. But water in Texas is allocated based on purpose and need. Governor Abbott appointed me as chairman of the Sulphur River Basin Authority back in 2018. And that was the number one thing that I wanted to do on the board, was get rid of Marvin Nichols. But here's the thing. The state of Texas is going to meet the water needs of Texas, wherever they are. My proposal is simple, and it is a desalination plant on the Gulf Coast. And without going into too much detail, let me tell you this. Proposition 4 was one of the constitutional constitutional amendments that was passed. I think y'all remember that back in November. I was against that for two reasons. What it did was it would raise $1 billion for a state water fund for 20 years. That would be $20 billion. I was against that because I believe that revenue should be appropriated during the legislative session, the regular legislative session, or the special session of the legislature. Second, I was against the tax because I didn't know who would control it. It's going to be controlled by urban. Y'all know this. We're a sacrifice over here in East Texas. Susan Conway preaches it, I think, correctly so. But it passed. But it did fail in House District 1, by the way. We fought that and the vote went down. But it is law, folks. This is the hand that we are dealt. So my proposal is to begin laying the pipeline infrastructure from the Gulf of America to the Richland Chambers Reservoir in Corsicana. Here's why. The Richland Chambers Reservoir is owned by the Tarrant Regional Water District, Fort Worth. And that desalinated water would go to the I-35 corridor or other parts of Texas that need the water. But the big thing about it is, give me about 10 more seconds, a little bit of grace here to finish my statement. The thing is, the pipeline infrastructure is what's going to take a while. It will take 10 years and $8 billion to do that. But if Texas has $20 billion in a water fund, that is appropriate legislation. It's a transmission capability of that water from the Gulf that needs to be acted on now. And I'm Chris Spencer. I'll be happy to answer any other questions. Thank you for your vote.
Thanks, Josh. It's another 30 seconds on the next.
That's right.
Good question here. As many as there are here, we're going to, if we can get these answered in like 2 minutes apiece, that would be great, if you can. Otherwise, I'm not being here all night.
And if I can, we've got a lot of people watching, so if y'all can speak up really loudly since we're not using the microphone and everyone's quiet, then you should be able to watch it later. I had told the folks before Mr. Bray got here, I'm leaving the comments open on the news page, so if people don't get their question answered, they can comment their question, and y'all can go back and answer it if you want to. Thank you.
Thank you. Voters are exhausted by negative ads. Can you name one specific policy position for your opponent you respect and one area you believe you generally differ? Chris, would you like to start off? And Josh started the...
Okay, well, I personally think, based on the preponderance of the evidence, that Josh and I are both against development of the Marvin Nichols Reservoir. What we do have to do is face the fact that those areas of Texas that are going to need the water are going to get the water, and we have to be part of the solution on that. Part of that solution is building that desalination plant. So Josh and I that may be an area that we agree on from the standpoint of we're against development of Marvin Nichols Reservoir, but we may disagree on it on the method of that.
Yes, I'm going to stay exactly with the same one. He and I agree that the Marvin Nichols is not an option that we need in East Texas. Where we're really going to disagree is the methodology. I believe as a business guy, the right thing to do is fund the proper research, get the brightest, smartest minds in the room, and find out what all the alternatives are. The problem we got going on with the research being conducted right now is the firm that's doing it and doing a lot of the work is the name firm of the lake. So you're not going to get a good research project when you've got a group that's going to stand and make $2 billion from building the lake. What do you think they want to do? They want the results to be build a lake. So I think we need to get a different firm involved, get the right research done, and then find the right alternatives, which are raising lake levels, which could be desal. But at the end of the day, the desal project he's talking about, a city on the Gulf right now just looked at this. They just put it out an RFP. They just put it out to the street for bid. It was 5 times the engineer's estimate. We don't have the technology currently to support the project he's talking about. So while I'd love to say that that's the option that we need to take, the funding's not there to support it. We've got to go back to the drawing board and find better options.
Thank you. Next question. How will you measure success after your first term, and what would failure look like?
Yes, I mean, you're gonna go to Austin as a new, what's called a freshman. You're gonna be signed a whole bunch of different committees. You're gonna have to go down there and create the relationships needed to negotiate equitably. Let's talk about the numbers. There's 150 state reps. 30 of them represent rural districts. If you go down there and alienate everybody down there, you're gonna get run over. There are state reps that are in districts adjoining us who could not carry their own legislation because they went down there and alienated the process. You've got to go create relationships and go down there and negotiate equitably so that when we have requests and needs in East Texas, that we can properly get those funded. And the answer to the success side of that is, if you can't go do that, you failed. If you go do that, we bring dollars back to this district, the district wins.
I echo what Josh says, and I think it's important to foster relationships. I know some of those reps, or at least know some of who they are, and oftentimes they are embarrassed to the state of Texas down there. And I want to build good relationships on both sides of the aisle. What I would like to do is form a rural Texas caucus. Because we all know this, that folks in rural areas have specific needs that urban areas don't. And oftentimes, those needs that we have are not split along ideological or party lines. So it's important to get along with both sides very well. I think what success would look like for me is seeing real progress being made on bringing down the M&O portion of the property taxes. Because, you know, we all talk about property tax relief, and they've been talking about it for years, right? We all got flyers in the mail that said we received $51 million in property tax relief. And that's been over a period of time. None of us have received those checks. What property tax relief means is that it's not as bad as what it could have been. What we're looking for is property tax reform. And I think that if we make some progress on that, that is what I would see as success.
Remain standing.
The microphone, okay.
What is the microphone?
Right. Okay, you got me back in the bag? Perfect. 3 of the 5 counties in HD-1, Morris, Red River, and Cass, are in the top 35 lowest unemployment counties in Texas. What could you do or will do to help reduce the unemployment numbers in these counties?
Let's repeat that again. Did you say they're among the lowest unemployed or lowest employed?
Unemployment.
It should have said the highest.
Oh, highest unemployment.
I apologize.
Stand corrected.
Okay, well, I personally think that, and it goes back to it again, I don't want to be redundant, but let's go back to taxes. Texas, our property taxes are some of the highest anywhere, and they've gone up 5 times the rate of inflation and population growth. So I think, and I believe correctly so, that to compress these property taxes are going to help the economic situation in our area. And so also the availability of affordable water and affordable housing. There are 4 legs to an economic development stool. They are affordable electric rates, affordable gas rates, surplus and affordable water, and affordable housing. Improving on these things would help us in our employment situation in these counties.
Well, this is a conversation I'm really passionate about because as chairman of the Paris Economic Development Corporation, we've proven what we can do. We brought $500 million worth of new capital investment to Lamar County in those jobs we talked about earlier. At the end of the day, there's several things that have to happen. One, you've got to have education that meets employers' needs. The number one thing we hear when we go out on the recruiting trail to see industry is, do you have a trained workforce that matches the employment needs in your community? If you don't have that, we're not interested. So we've got to get back into the educational system and rethink how we're educating kids. And so what works in the Metroplex doesn't work in East Texas. We need to be teaching our kids vocational trades like welding and plumbing and electrical so that they can fit the needs that we have in rural East Texas. We're not making chips in Red River County. They're making chips in Grayson County. We've got to make the education system match, which means quit making square pegs fitting round holes and trying to teach all these kids the same way. It's an educational issue. We've got to make sure our education system matches the needs of employers.
This is an education question. Concerning the topic of an efficient education system and the funding needed to do that, Article 7 of the Texas Constitution provides for the establishment of public free schools as well as higher education in Texas, which states a general diffusion of knowledge being essential to the presentation of the liberties and rights of the people. Also, the Republican platform supports, oh my gosh, I didn't see the back of that, supports parents' rights as well as school choice and funding to follow students. I would like for you to state your position on an efficient system of public free schools supporting parents' rights and schools' choice, funding to follow students, and also what you plan to do specifically to eliminate property taxes, including immediate elimination of school property taxes.
We'll need a little more time on this one. We got about okay, Chip. Test.
There you go.
And move to the border here.
How about now? Okay. Well, no. Okay, we'll try to do this. So, some fundamental differences in educational views here. First of all, let's just go ahead and get the elephant out. Chris Fincher ran on a pro-voucher position in the last election. While I believe that there's metropolitan markets that have absolute challenges with schools and liberal educations, and that there may be opportunities in the Metroplex where people need different opportunities, our rural East Texas schools have done a really good job. I'm a product of East Texas schools, my kids are a product of East Texas schools, and they serve me really, really well. And so I have a lot of concern about the accountability for those tax dollars that are going to these other educational spaces. So that's the first piece of that. When you look at school choice, we have school choice in Texas. And where we have school choice is that my kids live in the North Lamar School District and have the opportunity to go to Paris schools. We are electing to do that because that's what fits them. On the other side of it, when we start taking state tax dollars and pushing those into different programs that lack accountability, that's not equitable. And so we've got to make sure if we're going to push tax dollars that way, they got to be measured and they got to be held to the same standards that our public schools are. And I have a lot of concern about that. You just saw $1 billion of your tax dollars pushed into that. And you can say that doesn't come from state school funding, but it comes from the state's budget, which has an option to put it in public school funding. And so I have a lot of concern there. There were 2 or 3 more pieces to that question.
Can you get rid of property taxes? I'd like to hear.
Yeah, so the property tax thing. The M&O portion of the school tax can absolutely be bought down with state revenue. The risk is we have been in an economic time in Texas where our franchise fees have been good. Our oil and gas royalty fees have been good. All of our tax revenues are good. What happens when we go into a down cycle and we're fully dependent on state revenue replacing that M&O portion of the tax? Then the question is, legislature, you've got to make a decision. What are we going to cut? And I'll be honest with you, as a guy that loves public education, understands that education is the backbone of everything we do. And it represents 30% of the state's budget, 35%, and healthcare makes up the other 35%, that would get to 70%. That's a lion's share of the budget. What are we going to cut? And so if we do away and we totally eliminate the M&O portion portion of the tax, you run the risk of having unfunded schools. I am absolutely not for unfunded schools. What I am for is taking the excess revenue and making sure that we give relief, real relief, meaningful relief to our property owners. And that's what I intend to do in the legislature.
Okay, let's talk about school choice for a second. I'm a proud product of public schools, Hugh Springs Independent School District. Miguel and Terry McCoy here went to Dangerfield. I grew up early on in Dangerfield. And our public schools in Northeast Texas do a wonderful job. But let's talk about other parts of the state. Okay, unfortunately, in a school choice legislation, there was not a rural carve-out. In Austin ISD, if you had a child that went to elementary school, in any school in Austin, they got the privilege of celebrating Pride Week with Pride crayons, Pride action kits, and so forth. If you had school choice in Austin, you took that child out and went to another elementary school in Austin, same thing. So parents, by and large in the state of Texas, support the right of the parent to select an education that is best for their child with the funding following that child. Now, if Debbie and I had a child right now at home, that child would be going to Hugh Springs Elementary School, Hugh Springs Junior High, Hugh Springs High School. We don't have the problem in East Texas with our schools that the urban areas do. But there was not an urban or rural carve-out. School choice is the law of the land, and I support the right of that parent. Let me finish that. Also, we were talking about property taxes for a minute. I support the compression of the school M&O taxes. But there's no way to get all that done in 1 year. So ever put that on there. This is a long-term gig, folks.
We may have to throw this microphone out. What do you think of our state-related issues? That's like a broad thing. We're going to have to put that off the side. I think we've already answered this. Says you both have different property tax solutions. Please explain your solution. Why you think yours is better. We've already covered that.
I think we have.
Writing laws requires understanding the Texas Constitution, existing statutes, and bill drafting rules. What direct experience do you have drafting legislation, legal policy, or regulatory language? Your last one speaking. You need this. Can y'all hear him when he sounds off?
Yeah. I have participated in writing legislation on water policy. I have participated helping to write legislation on water policy through the Texas Legislative Council. And on regulatory matters, I look forward to being educated on the ground in the Texas House, but I have not served in public office before. My experience has been through civic service and serving on the Sulphur River Basin Authority. So we worked on water policy there. We tried to do, as Josh says, and we'd like to impound more water in Wright-Patman to meet needs of Texans, but it's run into resistance because, as you know, Wright-Patman originally was built, when it was Lake Terrace County, it was built as flood protection for Shreveport. Water supply is secondary in Patman. And so when we attempted to go and reallocate Wright-Patman, we met with serious resistance from the Army Corps of Engineers. So sometimes reallocation doesn't work, so we have to have other solutions.
Well, for roughly the last 20 years, Lamar County and the Chamber of Commerce, when the legislature is in session, we've taken a group of people down there to work with the legislature. I participated in that probably And so while directly writing legislation, no. Do I have involvement with the TCEQ? Do I have involvement with boards on every kind of level that you can have? Yes. The bottom line is, all through my career, there's been problems, and we've gone and found the solutions. And so this is no different. There's people in Austin. You've got committees. You've got teams. You've got people in your office that help with this. This is nothing new. It's just a different place.
I apologize for the faulty equipment up here. This is borrowed, so we're doing the best we can, y'all. So, sorry, same question. If you are elected to HD-1 as an HD-1 representative, name the first bill you will file and who you already have support from. You want to try the mic?
I think if you wiggle the cord, it'll come back.
We've been wiggling it
Well, I know, but
the
just
whole
wiggle it till they can hear you.
Wiggle it till it works.
Yeah, wiggle it till it works. That's
There's a ton.
You said that.
So there are a lot of passion projects, but I think those real serious issues, you need to create some relationships, and you need to get some support before you start writing those. The first one that I think is probably the most easy one to get written into law is what Judge Travis Ransom's looking for over in the district. What he's asking for is for 1 cent out of the 20 cents that we collect of the fuel tax to be given back to the counties. That is an easy one. Our county roads in East Texas are so underfunded. Everybody wants to get mad at the commissioners. Everybody wants to get mad at the county judge. They don't have the funding. But yet all these vehicles travel down these roads, including the trash trucks that I used to own, and we used to buy tons of fuel, and none of that fuel tax got back to our county roads. We need 5% of that fuel tax delivered to our county roads. The other side of that same bill that Travis has looked at, and I will sign off on immediately, is taking the electric cars. They need to be paying their fair share. So we need to be getting that portion as well, and making sure that our county roads aren't forgotten about at the expense of us and the benefit of the metropolitan market.
I want to echo exactly what Josh said, and I agree, and I know that Travis Ransom, the judge, has talked to both of us about sponsoring that legislation. Let me give you the history of that. Texas gives, and I would hate to be a county commissioner, all right, because the money's always, it's on your back. The target's there all the time. You have one pothole in front of your house that didn't get fixed. It's time to change commissioners, right? That's the way it works. In the state of Texas, $7.4 million a year, and that is it, is given to all 254 counties for road maintenance. So in Cass County, that is $37,000. You know yourself, you can chip and seal a quarter mile with that 37 cents, so it's $37,000. So let's talk about what this number means. And Josh is saying, I think correctly so, 5% of that gasoline tax. The gasoline tax is 20 cents a gallon, so that would mean 1 cent per gallon would go back to the counties proportionally. What it means, let me just say for Cass County alone, it would be $280,000 a year, so $2.8 million over 10 years. It doesn't solve the road problems, but it goes a long way towards helping. And that would be one of the first pieces of legislation that I would file.
Question, if leadership refuses to schedule your bill for a hearing, what procedural tools are available to move your policy forward?
I think that, let me address that a little bit. Susan Conway here on the front row. Susan is not a social media warrior. She is an activist, and she is a fighter. She appeared before the Natural Resources Committee in Texas House fighting against Marvin Nichols, and she made quite an impression on it. Representative Van Deaver helped fight that as well by sponsoring legislation to take any state water project that had been in the state water plant for 50 years or more, to take that out of the state water plant. As we know, Marvin Nichols has been in since 1968, so it's been there a long time. But Representative Van Deaver got a hearing on it, but it never got scheduled on the calendars committee. And I found that stunning with the clout that he had in the legislature as a committee chairman. So the short answer to that is, if it's not scheduled, I don't know what you do except to put public pressure on. And have folks like Susan Conway and Eddie Wayne Belcher, different ones from Red River Canyon, come down. Judge Robert Bridges here in the back, come down to the legislature and put pressure on. But building relationships is key.
Yeah, so we talked about earlier, the fact that everything that's done in Austin is a relationship game. And if you don't have the relationships with the people that are on the committee heads, chairs, you're in trouble. So first of all, the first piece of that is we got to make sure that we have Republicans leading our committees and being co-chairs of committees. If we don't have that, we've automatically got a problem. The second thing is, there's times when you're representing rural East Texas, you're going to have a challenge. Because like I said earlier, we've only got 30 out of 150. The bottom line is, I think it's an interesting point. While I'm getting cast into a box for voting in a local sheriff's race almost 20 years ago on the Democratic ticket, you can't alienate Democrats, because at the end of the day, a lot of these things pass on a 2/3 majority. And we don't have control of the Texas House at the level that you need to pass things like constitutional amendments. So if you're not willing to go and negotiate and have equitable relationships with both parties, you're not going to get legislation passed, particularly on the level at which you're going to need to put it on a ballot, which takes 2/3 votes.
This is a hard one here. Whichever one of y'all win the primary, will you be committed to a debate between the Democrat candidate, Mr. Sean Huffman?
Of course.
I certainly will. Sean Huffman from Paris in Lamar County is a Democrat that is running for Texas House District 1. He's a good guy. That doesn't mean vote for him. Y'all vote for me. But he's a good guy, and I would certainly debate Sean.
I mean, I guess I could echo it. Bottom line is, I think everybody's ready to debate whenever y'all are ready.
I think everybody's ready for this to be over.
Good question here. What will you do when the Metroplex area representatives tell you they are more powerful because they have a bigger population?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is they do. The bottom line, you can sit up here and say anything you want to say, but we went over it earlier. You have 30 rural representatives out of 150. I'm going to echo it again. You better create the relationships needed. What's interesting about the Marvin Nichols Reservoir, what I'm going to call pulling out of the water plan bill, is Representative Van Deaver was actually successful in getting about 45 to 50 votes. So he actually had walked in and gotten some votes from outside of rural districts against that bill. So the bottom line, we got to go create relationships and we got to get support. And then the truth of the matter is, you've got to find common ground where the Metroplex has some opportunity to win and we have some opportunity to win. That's my big problem with the voucher bill. When you look at the voucher bill, there was $1 billion. That's $7 million that each district, $6 million each district was to receive. How many dollars do you think we're getting of that money? So public education in East Texas and education for our kids, out of $6 million, we got zero. So a bill that could have had a carve out for rural districts or either funding for rural districts, we didn't get our part. That's bad.
The North Texas, and it's not our responsibility, it's East Texas, to make sure that the Metroplex has water. But the state of Texas takes it upon themselves to make sure that they do. The powers that be, and when I speak of the powers that be, let's name them individually. North Texas Municipal Water District, Tarrant Regional Water District, the City of Irving, and Upper Trinity. Those are the 4 groups that are going to need water. They want to own the water in Northeast Texas. They want to own the land and own the water. The citizens of Dallas and the legislators that represent Region C, which is that particular area, they just want to make sure they have water when the time comes. Now, here's the truth of the matter. I'm totally against Marvin Nichols. As we look ahead, if Dallas in North Texas, they fixed every leaky pipe they've got, and they drained every swimming pool, and they quit watering their yard, they're still going to have water by 2070, and that is a fact. It's the fastest growing region in America, so what we have to have is solutions. And reach across that aisle to Representative Katrina Pearson there from Rockwall and the different ones that are pro-Marvin Nichols, and to help find a solution. And I think D-South is part of that solution. Thank you.
A lot of these are similar, that's why I'm kind of going through these. Not like I'm cherry picking any of them, but I'm not. If elected as HD-1 representative, what committees will you request assignment to and why?
I want to serve on the Natural Resources Committee under Chairman Cody Harris, and that is a futuristic goal to get. But I think that my background as chairman of the Soap River Basin Authority will give me a leg up. I'd like to serve on that committee as well as serve on the Transportation Committee and help for roads and bridges and everything that are so vital here in Northeast Texas.
Yeah, so for me, it's appropriations. All my life has been around money. And money is what makes the world go round. And we need to make sure that we're spending that money wisely. And so when you look at my experience on bank boards, you look at my experience on the EDC board and rural health, the hospital board, we've got to make sure that we're allocating money appropriately, that the money that we're getting is being spent appropriately. And so for me, it would be about appropriation.
What is your stance on private property rights and eminent domain?
Yeah, so currently our family is in the process of 2 eminent domain proceedings. Those proceedings involve land that we own on major highways. Look, I don't think any Texan is not willing to give up their land for a highway. That's absolutely necessary for public safety. On the other side of it, we need to make sure that they're equitably compensated when that happens. 271 expansion to go to a divided road, 82 expansion to go to a divided road. There is an eminent domain process that's got to be used in this state for public safety. The problem with eminent domain is when we start reaching. And when we start looking at Marvin Nichols, we're reaching. And we're reaching and we're doing land grabs for metropolitan needs that they think that they have on the backs of people in East Texas. We've got to find solutions, and the solutions can't be on the back of East Texas. And the easiest thing that they've done, if you look at, let's go through the list, Lake Cooper, Bodar, Ralph Hall, all those have been built in my lifetime. And while they're saying that it's eminent domain, it's the pressure of eminent domain that actually makes that happen. And that's what we've got to guard against, and that's what I'll go to Austin and fight for, just like I'll fight against Marvin Nichols.
I want to see eminent domain in Texas reformed, and here's how. Susan Conway and I have been on a podcast and discussed this before. In the state of Texas, the wording in the code for eminent domain is for public use. That wording needs to be changed and codified as public necessity. Now, all of us have driven on roads that were required to build for eminent domain. We all know that we can look at Nevada and Hoover Dam, which is an excellent example of eminent domain that works. But Jerry Jones Stadium in Arlington, and they used eminent domain there. Hell, they're not even winning, right? And so that's what happened. So what we want to do, okay, is change the wording, change the code and law from public use to public necessity, and I'll file that legislation to do just that.
This has kindly almost already been answered. I know that's kind of weird verbiage there. I am an Avery scholar, of course. Can you point to a single safeguard in current Texas law that guarantees rural families won't lose water so AI servers, data centers, can stay cool? If not, would you support legislation that would safeguard them? Got to do with water and eminent domain.
Okay. Obviously, we've addressed eminent domain, changing the wording from public use to public necessity. These AI centers are going to use and consume an extraordinary amount of water. I don't know how much, but obviously, data centers appear to be the wave of the future in Texas. And that's a very, very scary proposition, and there's going to have to be serious regulation from some of what I've seen. And I don't know if this is correct me if I'm wrong, some of the data centers that they're talking about building would require a reservoir the size of Marvin Nichols to take care of that water. And that's a very scary proposition. So Texas is going to have to really regulate this industry for sure.
Yeah, so several things going on there. The first one that I have a lot of concern about is the power consumption that they're going to use. When we flip on our switch at our homes, we got to have power. The same with our industries. They got to have power. We cannot have our industries and our homes jeopardized by the power consumption that they have. So legislatively, we've got to make sure that there's laws in place that protect rural co-ops, that they have the option and opportunity to deny that service. The truth of the matter is, a lot of these data centers are bringing their own power. They're bringing standalone nuclear. Look, if you want to bring your own power, then we can have a conversation about it. The second piece of that on the water, most of East Texas and these smaller communities don't have the water that they currently need. Red River Clarksville is a great example. The current demands here are in jeopardy because our infrastructure is old. And so we need more capital. Let's talk about local control. This is a local control decision. Legislatively in Austin, Texas, we don't know where the data centers belong. Do they belong in Dumas? Do they belong in Wichita Falls? I don't know where they belong, but they belong where there's enough water to support them and enough power to support them. And so we've got to be careful that we don't strip the local control. I'm all about local control. Local decision makers know their resources and know what's best for them. At the end of the day, we got to make sure that we got the right people in place locally, that they don't fail the system and offer up a supply of water, a supply of electricity that they don't have.
Proposition 10 reads, Texas should prohibit Sharia law. This gives some examples of the 300 mosques, but we get down to the question is, that in the state of Texas and more being built, what are your plans to quickly stop Texas from becoming another Minneapolis or Detroit? Related to Sharia law.
Yeah, so first and foremost, we have a great country and a great state with great laws. There cannot be laws that supersede the laws of the land that we currently have. So the Islamification of Texas can happen. I think you've seen Governor Abbott absolutely push back and do the right thing on that. But the truth of the matter is our communities are in jeopardy of it. And so we've got to make sure that the American and Texas law continue to be the law of the land, and that Sharia law is once and for all banned from Texas.
And I echo that also. Let me say this, when we talk about Sharia law, we need to understand something about Islam. Islam is not a religion. Islam is a political system. All right? It has constitutional cover by operating as a religion. So Josh is certainly right on the governor being proactive. But this Islamification, and what they're doing, it's a civilized jihad, is what it is. They're coming in, they're being nice, they're coming into communities like McKinney, and Frisco, and different ones, getting elected to the city council, and so forth. And they're working their way into it, so we just have to be very cognizant of it. And here's what it means, folks. When you get into these elections that have low voter turnout, like your school board elections and city council elections, we need to turn out to vote, because that's how these votes are winning. And so we need to be proactive, not
What do you propose to secure our elections? Question on the author of that, is that concerning like election tampering or closed primaries or both?
Both.
Both.
Well, I think that the primaries in Texas should be closed. Primaries in Texas were closed, I'd be your state representative right now running for re-election. And that is not the case. All right, second thing, repeat the question again, the other part.
What do you propose to secure our elections?
Okay, I think, and for the most part, in Texas, we have secure elections. Obviously, we need closed primaries, but our Texas elections are secure, at least they are in Northeast Texas. I do believe that we need to make sure that illegals are not voting in Texas, and they are. They are voting in municipal elections. They can fill out a voter registration card, and by default, they are going to be registered to vote. And so it's going to be up to an agency or whatever to decertify. Second, we all need IDs to vote. Now, where we are now, where I am in East Texas, everybody has an ID to vote. But when you get into the urban areas, it's a violation of their civil rights, 10% ID to vote. So that needs to be corrected.
What do you propose to secure our elections?
Yeah, so several things going on here. First, there should never be a liberal Democrat determining who the Republican candidate is. The devil's in the details on how you close a Republican primary. What makes someone Republican enough to be in the Republican primary is the question. Is it so many years of voting? Is it registering 3 months before? And so there is a mass exodus of people leaving the Democratic Party because the party has left them. And so if they match the characteristics and ideology of our party, then we want to make sure that we don't eliminate them. Because at the end of the day, our goal should be to continue to grow the Republican Party with like-minded people so that we don't lose control of other elected official spots like we just lost west of the Metroplex. So if we aren't mindful of how we do that, it can be the wrong move. But we should never let liberal Democrats determine who our candidate is. On the other side of that, clearly, you should have an identification to vote in Texas. And we should make sure that every ballot that's cast is counted in a manner that's effective and safe and protected so that we've got the right results from the election.
With the Marvin Nichols permitting being postponed until 2030, 4 years away, y'all, 3.5. What is your thought for trying to stop the permitting process or the construction of that reservoir, if possible?
You thought we addressed that?
I think we've addressed it.
Okay.
Hold on, let me ask you a question. Is the permitting going to take place in 2030? When did that come up?
The mediation agreement.
Mediation
Yeah,
agreement.
there was a mediation agreement
That's
between Region C and Region D, and they cannot file a permit until after 2030.
Okay.
The project itself will be completed by 2070. That is a pushback of the completion date.
Because it's about a 25 to 28-year process between permitting from state and federal and impounding the law.
In all reality, a year from now, though, after they do their evaluation, they could come back and say, we're going to keep it in the plan because they're already buying people's property now. So ground could be broken in 2030 as soon as a permit was given, if it gets pushed through. That's where we're at.
That is true. Any more thoughts or comments on that?
No, we're all against it here in this room, right?
Yeah.
Amen. What is your top 3 priorities and your realistic timeline to achieve them? You answered the last one, you did, didn't you? Go ahead.
Top 3 priorities. So the first one, I think is probably most important to this region, is we've got to get an alternate plan for Marvin Nichols. That's first and foremost. And so getting them allocated money to fund research to figure out what those alternatives are. I think we beat that one into the ground. The second one, our rural communities and cities are absolutely struggling. And so we can sit here and we can talk about property tax relief and eliminating property tax, and I'm for both of those. But the bottom line, our cities and counties are struggling in East Texas in manners that you cannot even imagine. Our infrastructure is old, and there isn't the capital currently to get that replaced at the level which we need to do it. I've got to go and fight for more dollars back to this district to improve the infrastructure. The third one, look, Morris, Cass, and Red River, as a general rule, have about a 25% greater unemployment rate than what the rest of the state is. We've got to bring jobs back to this region and help provide a place for our kids to become employed, raise their families, and have quality of life.
Well, obviously, taking Marvin Nichols out of the state water plan is probably as important to us in this room as anything else. That's absolutely vital to do. And I echo what Josh says about our rural areas and our rural areas struggle. I know they do work. I know that these commissioners work with less and less and less all the time. And so that's a big struggle. It's a struggle not only in Morris, Cass, Red River, but other counties. The western portion of Bowie County and DeKalb, it's the same exact way. So we have a lot of challenges in Texas, but Texas and Texas people are resilient, and I look forward to being part of that fight.
What is your plan for engaging young adults and longtime residents in county decision-making? I don't know if that's actually a House District question or a county question, but I guess it can go.
Defer it to Judge Robert Bridges.
Judge, you want to speak on that on your behalf?
Hey, I'm not the same.
What is your understanding on the rule of capture and your stance? Would you support a GCD?
A ground conservation district?
Yes.
I certainly would support a ground conservation district. The rule of capture is the right rule. If it's my property and I drill a well, that's my water. The big problem is that you're having commercial, high-capacity drilling that's taking place. Let's look over Mount Pleasant, where Lake Monticello is. You have some urban interest, and I mean the North Texas Municipal Water District, that wants to drill deep water drilling and do slant drilling and take that water and pump it into Lake Monticello, where they're ultimately going to have the water rights. That's a very dangerous situation to be in. We don't ever want it to be where there's a meter tap put on our wells. Absolutely not. But the rule of capture is important. And what's happening is, if they're not going to get the surface water, they want to take our groundwater. And so many areas in Northeast Texas don't have a groundwater conservation district, and we need that.
Well, clearly, this issue is no different than Marvin Nichols. The Metroplex wants what isn't theirs. And so we've got to take the means to protect that, which is that. And so, yes, I would support conservation districts mainly because the reach and grab, while it's surface water, it can be groundwater, it will be anything that they can do to get their water, they're coming after it. So we've got to protect it.
Rural health care access is a challenge. What would you do to attract and retain health care providers to improve services for residents in Red River County or in the rural areas that you, if elected?
As chairman of the hospital board in Paris, this is a pressing issue. And it's a pressing issue not just in Paris, it's a pressing issue across the entire state of Texas. Providers, and particularly specialists, are absolutely hard to come by. And so we as a state have got to put the proper funding in place, which I'm proud to say Senator Eltoff, that previously represented us and has endorsed me, did exactly that in Tyler. He put in the UT medical system medical school there in order to provide more opportunities for us to educate kids in Texas. I'm proud to say that at Parish Regional, we have a residency program. What we know is if we train our people and we bring them back here, they're more likely to stay here. And so we've got to fund institutional universities in order to add more capacity. Texas Tech just did the same thing with a veterinarian program. Our veterinarians are the same thing. They're short-staffed. We got to have more capacity. As the state continues to grow, we need to grow our institutions with that in order to provide the output needed to support our communities. And so it's about funding more education and then giving them an opportunity to come back to our rural markets.
In the legislation that's just passed and President Trump signed into law, rural Texas is going to receive $1.4 billion in healthcare funding over 5 years. Now, what that translates to is $282 million a year. What we need to do is make sure that Northeast Texas, particularly House District 1, gets their fair share and they're not left out. Because we're as rural gets. Let me give you a prime example. Cass County, Atlanta, Texas. There is now one physician in Atlanta, it's Dr. Richard Hosnick, who is a supporter of mine. But when he first started practicing medicine 20 years ago, there were 15 physicians in Atlanta, Texas. So what we have to do is attract those young people, those young doctors out of medical school with competitive salaries. And that's going to be the challenge. So we need to make sure that House District 1 gets their fair share of this rural health care fund.
Should Texas protect agricultural land from conversion to industrial projects like solar, wind, data, battery energy storage systems, reservoirs? If so, why?
How many of y'all like all these solar panels now? Y'all like those? Okay, well, I don't. I'll say this much. Private property rights in Texas for sale. People should be able to do what they want with their land as long as it doesn't infringe on their neighbor's land. But to see the proliferation of solar, which I think is a scam. Renewables have their place. But to see the agricultural land disappear because of these solar panels, I think it's a travesty in Texas. And here's the other part about it. The TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, if I wanted to drill an oil well on my property right now, they're going to come regularly. And they're going to tell me whether I do it or not. They're not going to say anything about solar or wind. And that's a liberal agenda. And I believe that my opponent, Mr. Bray, if they had Solar Farmer magazine, he would be the man of the year. Okay? He has a lot of solar property in Lamar County, and I'm anxious to hear him say what his position is on that.
Yeah, so probably the most fundamental thing in Texas is landowner rights. And so we've got to be careful that we don't go down a really, really slippery slope with landowner rights, because the same rights that I'm fighting for you at Marvin Nichols for your land is the same right that that landowner has for that solar. Now, with that said, let's talk about the issues. First of all, a liberal administration passed a bunch of green tax incentives that should have never happened. The other side of that same administration passed a bunch of emissions issues for our coal plants that crushed us in East Texas at Mount Pleasant, Sulphur Springs, and further deeper there. If a liberal administration don't pass those laws, we're not sitting here with solar because capacity on our lines are still full. The reason solar has found its way to East Texas is because there's line capacity. And there's people who are struggling on their agricultural holdings to make ends meet, and they've elected that. While he says that, the number one project that approached me was in Cunningham, Texas. I sat out. I didn't take the 400 acres at $600 and something an acre for my family. Per year lease. Why? Because I love green grass and I love black cattle grazing on it. And at the end of the day, once you've been left out once and you get surrounded by that, you find yourself going, man, I thought I was doing the right thing and now I've been left out. So when approached on another one, further west of town, he's absolutely right. My mom made an election to say, I don't want to be left out. Now let's talk about the challenges with it. Just like my landfill. Nobody wants a landfill in their backyard. Nobody wants solar fields in their backyard. We need, as a legislator, to make sure that we have, as a legislation, make sure we have setbacks, make sure we have visual screenings, make sure we have proper oversight. The TCEQ had water wells in my landfill on literally 250-foot centers. And if I got anywhere out of step with that, violations, penalties. What we've got is the same thing we had back in the old days. We got the wild, wild west going on, where there's not the proper oversight. When they started with oil wells, there's oil wells all over the state that aren't capped, and there aren't financial instruments in place to cap it. On the other side of this, legislation passed some things like 8 year, I think it's at 8 years, they have to post financial assurance. That's a reclamation bond against those projects. That's a scam. That needed to have been done day one when they built that project to make sure that not only is that land protected, but the land next to it. And so you can't be a nuisance to your neighbor, but at the same time, guys, when we start talking about what we are and aren't going to let happen, there's a gas plant being built in Morris Cass County right now. I bet the neighbors there aren't happy about that either. But at the end of the day, we need, when we flip the light on, to have power. The other piece of legislation that has to be passed is solar and wind cannot make a high portion of the grid up. And when I say that, when we become fully reliant on that at any kind of level, we run the risk of not having power when we want it in inclement weather. That cannot happen. They should be fully reliable. They should be fully responsible for making sure whatever their capacity is, that they have on-demand power that they can supply in inclement weather, so that we don't find ourselves without power. Thank you.
What principles should govern inter-regional water transfers? In other words, moving water from region D to C, vice versa, or one county to another.
Say the question one time.
Says Marvin Nichols project primarily benefits DFW while flooding Northeast Texas land. What principles should govern inter-regional water transfer?
Well, we talked a lot about Marvin Nichols, and obviously we can continue to oppose it, but at the end of the day, the intermovement of water, Texans aren't going to do without water, period. That's not going to happen. So we've got to make sure that there's equitable opportunities for people to have their water, but not at the expense of somebody else. And so at the end of the day, I think there's going to be interlocal agreements. There's going to be places like Lamar County where you're seeing Lamar County water supply to rural districts, and those need to be interlocal agreements. And I'm for those. At the same time, we've got to make sure that we're not letting the Metroplex come get our water in the process.
And I would echo that. I would echo what Josh said. There are going to be interlocal agreements for water, and I think that there needs to be county input from the county judge, the commissioner's court, and even a vote of the people on interbasin transfers. In addition to that, if there is municipal water within the county, then the county residents ought to have almost like mineral rights to that water. So it ought to be rewarding to the citizens of the county, not just the particular water district that engages in that interlocal agreement. Let's talk a little bit more about solar, and I want to tell you why this is very, very important. Everyone knows that the devil in the details of Marvin Nichols is not the footprint of the lake, which is 66,000 acres, but the environmental mitigation. Everybody in this room knows what mitigation is. Well, let me tell you some land that's not going to be mitigated. You see all these solar farms? None of that land is going to be mitigated. You're going to look up, and in Lamar, Red River County, there's not going to be a lot of mitigation land left. So what's going to happen if Marvin ever gets built is that pie is going to be smaller. And so anyone that owns land between here and Patton, that land is gone. That land is going to be taken for environmental mitigation. And that is part, set aside any kind of grid expansion you get because of the solar. The likelihood of your land being taken for mitigation has gone up exponentially. So that's something I think about.
support the creation of a water master in this basin?
No.
No.
Like that.
We can all go home if we do that quick, right?
Y'all seen me put a bunch of these to the side. They're the same questions we've already answered. What measurable outcomes should voters expect from you by the end of your first term? Sort of kind of similar to one earlier, but not quite.
No, I feel like we answered it.
Okay.
I hope that we
Move
can,
on.
I would like to say that our property tax bill came down. That's what I would call measurable success. So, Lord willing, that's what's going to happen in my first term in the Texas House of Representatives. One of the things that we didn't talk about is runaway appraisals. And these appraisal districts, you know, each entity blames the other. The appraisal districts blame the comptroller, the counties blame the appraisal district, and no one's responsible. All we know is we're not getting property tax relief. Our property taxes continue to go up. So what I would consider success would be our property tax bills going down.
Well, we've both laid out property tax plans, and he's gone from eliminating the property tax to now going down, and I agree, it needs to go down. The thing that I'll tell you related to property taxes is we've got to be fiscally responsible at the state level. I'm getting cast out right now for voting on a tax increase in Paris. That is the most deceptive thing I've probably seen. Well, it's one of the most deceptive, but several more of this election. PJC is the second lowest taxing college in the state of Texas out of 50. So the question becomes, how bad was a tax increase that truly, as a board member, I voted on a decrease, but these out of control appraisals made my vote become an increase. But the truth of the matter is, you're already paying 6 cents versus 16, almost 1/3. And so to market me as a guy who's running on tax decreases and saying I'm increases is absolutely crazy when it was a result of an appraisal, on top of the fact that you won't say, as a fiscally responsible board, we ran the second most efficient college out of 50 in the whole entire Texas junior college system. Applaud that. That is absolutely wonderful. The junior college board is doing a great thing. And the other piece of that nobody was talking about is our tuition is about 20% below the state average. So not only is your tax cheap, your tuition is cheap. Thank you.
This is a yes/no question. Should cities and water suppliers be required to clearly disclose whether their drinking water comes from groundwater, surface water, or blended sources, and would you support legislation to strengthen that transparency?
Yes.
Yes. That's an easy one.
So here's a, some of y'all may not know what this is, some of you may. Do you agree with the Republican Party rule number 44? Are both of y'all familiar with what that is? Okay, rule number 44 is a censorship rule that when a candidate runs on a party platform, they agree to uphold the principles, platform, planks that the Republican parties have already established and set forth. So rule 44 is a censorship. If you do not go by that, then counties and districts and states can censor those representatives because they did not uphold their oath as a Republican legislative representative. So with that said, do you both support the Rule 44 Republican Party?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
I'm sorry. On the yeses, if y'all could be a little bit louder, because without the mic, they're not going to be able to hear what you say.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So these two questions here, one's for Chris, one's for Josh. These are two separate things. Chris, Governor Abbott and Ag Commissioner Sid Miller have both endorsed you. will you stand with us against Marvin Nichols, which you said you would, Reservoir, even if the establishment calls you a rhino?
Wow. I do not know how you can be called a rhino if you were conservative enough to say absolutely no to the Marvin Nichols Reservoir. But if I'm called a rhino, then I'll take it. And I was asked in Morris County yesterday, the governor did endorse me. I'm glad to have his endorsement. I have the endorsement of the Texas Farm Bureau, and most conservative organizations in Texas have supported me. It is not endorsements that matter, it is ideas and principles that you will enact as a servant leader in the Texas House of Representatives. That's what matters. But I was asked yesterday, if the governor came along and said, we need you to support Marvin Nichols, would you support Marvin Nichols? Absolutely not. Now, I happen to know that the governor is against Marvin Nichols Reservoir. I know that. We've had conversation about it before. And he thinks that every alternative needs to be exhausted before that is built. But it doesn't matter if they call me a rhino or whatever. I'm against Marvin Nichols, and will be till the day I die.
So that's an interesting question related to the endorsement. And I find it very, very interesting that he got the endorsement. We got to ask ourselves why. The last time that he got the endorsement, it was at the expense of our public schools. And he sat here tonight and said he thought our schools in East Texas were well run. And so if they're well run, you have to ask yourself, why would you vote for vouchers when we're not going to get any of the funding? So the second question you got to ask yourself is, if he's worked on the SRBA board and Governor Abbott said he's against the Marvin Nichols Reservoir, why haven't we gotten that taken out of the water plan when that's been what both of them want? I don't understand that. On the other side of it, the funding that I've received has come strictly out of this district other than one organization, and that's ART. There's a few family members outside the district, no special interest groups. Ask yourself, what does Texas for Strong Borders represent? What do the Wilkes and Dunns represent? Why do they want to send you one mailer a day, every day for the last multiple weeks to try to beat me? And why does Governor Abbott want him instead of me? Because they're looking for people that will go vote and do what they need them to do. Not vote this district in what's the best interest of the people in this district. Very, very far differences. I want endorsements from people in this region. Not people out of the Metroplex, not people out of Austin, and not special interest groups.
Okay, Josh, this one's for you. If elected to represent HD-1, would any of your current business interests, board positions, or professional relationships limit your ability to aggressively oppose Marvin Nichols Reservoir? That's part one of the question. You want to go ahead and answer that first one there?
So the majority of the boards that I serve on are public boards. Every one of those I would let go of if elected. The only other board that I would be on is the Guarantee Bank and Trust Board. He made an allusion to that earlier. What specific people do as board members don't represent other board members. I think that is an absolute stretch, no different than the stretch that I voted for Obama or Hillary. We can't make those kind of jumps and assumptions. And so, no, my position will be voting how I see fit for the organizations that I'm in.
If a conflict arose that could impact your businesses or affiliations, would you still commit to prioritizing the interests of your constituents, and how would you address that conflict?
Yeah, so every board that I'm on, you sign conflict of interest on, and you recuse yourself. And every board that I've ever sat on, which are a bunch of them, we have conflicts. When I served on the hospital board, we were the solid waste provider. When I served on the junior college, we were the solid waste provider. Every one of those you sign a conflict with, you expose them, and then you don't vote on the issues. And so this is this is very common. But on the other side of it, I don't know what those conflicts are as we sit here today. But yes, you're going to have to fill out conflicts, and it's perceived conflicts. Even if they're not really if they could be perceived as a conflict, they are a conflict. You recuse yourself.
solar project causes contamination, fire damage, or flooding, what specific state laws ensure that residents are protected and compensated? I don't know that there is any. As far as I know, there's not any. Okay, there's one here. There's one on here. Let's see. Have you already had time to review information on Marvin Nichols Reservoir or been to any meeting? Okay, have you been to any meetings concerning the Marvin Nichols Reservoir?
Oh, my. More meetings than I can count on the Marvin Nichols Reservoir. And I want to say this also, when they talk about we're going to do a study and study, this thing has been studied and studied. We know the impact it's going to have in Northeast Texas. So I think that subject to Marvin Nichols tonight has been exhaustive for sure.
Yeah, so the last 2 decades of my life have been spent building businesses, serving as chairman of the hospital board, serving as chairman of the economic development board, serving on the junior college board. I have been absolutely pulled every direction that a guy can be pulled. If I'm elected, absolutely I'll be involved in this. I didn't go to Austin to fight for the heartbeat bill. There's nobody in this room that loves life more than I do. I didn't go to Austin to fight for the Second Amendment to protect guns. And I'm going to bet that the majority of these people in here all protect life and all protect guns. And you weren't there either. And so when I'm elected, I will go to Austin and I will fight for Marvin Nichols and I will be at every meeting that's held. But no, I have not been at every single meeting around Marvin Nichols.
Just kind of have a follow-up on that. Will you commit today to start attending meetings and opposing the Marvin Nichols Reservoir on our behalf?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm going to continue to go to anti-Marvin Nichols meetings, Region C meetings, Region D, whatever. Absolutely. And the Region C meetings, by the way, those are pro-Marvin Nichols. I know that I've been to some of those meetings before, and David Neighbors as well. Imagine, Susan, you've been to Region C meetings.
Will you commit to pursuing infrastructure improvements for our state?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I like those yes/no questions, don't you? The rest of these are more, well, this one's towards you. How are you going to be able to give adequate time and energy to the fighting of the Marvin Nichols Reservoir with all that you are already in leadership roles in Lamar County?
Yeah, so
How are you going to balance that?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I would leave the EDC, I would leave the hospital, I would leave the junior college, I would leave the PJC Foundation, I would leave the the Boys Club Foundation. This would be my sole role, and that's what I commit to.
That one's already been answered. Let's hear it for the candidates. That concludes, we need a closing statement.
You gotta have
Okay,
a
being
closing
since you
statement.
opened it, closing statement, you have 3 minutes apiece.
Y'all want to go ahead and pass a hat for a love offer? I've got my consultant, Nick Maddox, in the back of the room, and he would appreciate passing that hat. I guarantee you that. I just want to thank everybody in Red River County, everybody for being here tonight. The people in Red River County have been so gracious to me over the years, and we're all in this fight together. And I wish that my friend Gary Cheatwood was here tonight. There's Gary, my goodness gracious, I didn't see him. What'd you switch in here? Okay, all right. I served on the SRBA board with Mr. Cheatwood for years, and he's been How old are you now, Gary? 65?
Yeah.
Something like that. He's been fighting Marvin Nichols forever. And so I am so glad that he's here. We're on the same page on this. And I want to fight for Gary Cheapwood and Susan Conway as much as I want to fight for anyone else. And that is my commitment to you. I want to be a state representative that glorifies God in what I say, what I do, and how I vote. And ask for your friendship, your support, your prayers, your vote for Chris Spencer for state representative. Thank you.
So Red River County is a second home to me. Our family has made our living down here for a lot of years. My dad hauled trash here for 20, 30 years. I hauled trash here for 10 or 15 years. We own land in Red River County on the over toward English. We own land over toward Rivercrest. This is home. These are the people I want to represent. I don't have a desire to represent people out of West Texas. I don't have a desire to represent the governor. I don't have a desire to represent the Metroplex. My desire is to represent these people here. And so at the end of the day, a guy asked me the other day, he said, why should I vote for you? I said, first of all, I'm a Christian, and I'll vote accordingly. The second one, I'm a businessman. I'll run this state budget just like I run my own business, stretching every dollar we get and eliminating waste. Third, I'm a servant. I've served on bank boards, hospital boards, economic boards. I want to go serve. And then fourth, I'll be a voice to y'all. Look, at the end of the day, I'd love your vote. And I want you to vote for me to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. Would love your support March 3rd. Thank you.